Bonjour et bienvenue à notre rendez-vous de midi avec la presse. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le 19 juillet. Permettez-moi de vous dire, je suis heureux de vous retrouver après une absence de quelques jours indépendante de ma volonté. La réunion hebdomadaire des chefs de cabinet est encore en cours et donc comme d'habitude, nous vous informerons sur l'agenda du collège de demain, ainsi que des événements de presse, une fois que cette réunion sera terminée, donc plus tard cet après-midi. Now, we have no specific announcements for you today, but before giving you the floor, I would like to welcome a group of students and, I'm told, digital influencers. I think there are no longer any young people in the world who are not at the same time digital influencers. So I'd like to welcome you here in the press room today. I hope that you enjoy your stay in Brussels, as well as the experience here in the press room. Benvindos. With that, we are ready for your questions. Who has a question for us? Yes, go ahead, Mose.
Good to see you back here again. I think we all some kind of digital nomads, if not influencers. Yesterday I asked a question about North Macedonia and this intergovernmental conference which took place this morning. And there was a press conference today, but it was very brief. So I wonder if we can ask a follow-up question, maybe to Peter about that. No, he seems to nod no. So I have another question for him. Okay.
Let's do it differently. Why don't you ask your question and we see if we can answer it or not?
Okay, thank you. The question is about, let's say, if there are any, let's say, additional conditions in this maybe secret or at least non-published French proposal or protocol which has been adopted by North Macedonia, by its parliament. We know that it requires North Macedonia to amend its constitution. And that's a kind of condition to continue to open next phase of the conference, which has started now. We start now with the screening process. My question is, I mean, in practical, does it mean, let's say, that things will go on more or less as usual in the start of accession negotiations until North Macedonia has made this amendment of its constitution? And a related question is, are there any other, let's say, conditions on bilateral issues which we don't know about, maybe were written in this revised French proposal, which could obstruct, let's say, the progress of the conference? Thank you.
Okay. Now, I'm not sure I understood your first question, because you said, will things continue as usual until the North Macedonians have changed their constitution? What do you mean by will things continue as usual?
You get the impression that every, let's say, accession negotiations start with this screening process, which perhaps also a bit political. So in the meantime, perhaps there's no urgent need for North Macedonia to amend this constitution. Although it was mentioned that in next phase there will be another conference.
Indeed. That's also something that the president confirmed when she was in North Macedonia a few days ago, where she explicitly referred to the fact that as soon as North Macedonia would have modified its constitution, there would automatically be the second IGC. But she didn't specify what happens in the meantime. So this is the state of play that we are at today. So today you had a first IGC, there was a press conference. The next stage, from what I understand, is for North Macedonia to modify its constitution, which will trigger the second IGC. I'm checking with Peter to see whether I'm not saying anything which is incorrect, but he's nodding, so that seems correct. Voilà.
Follow-up questions, but I do it this time because I think that Commissioner Faheli said that the Commission is very open to media reporting about all the negotiations until now. And I suppose it was referring to also the French proposal, but we know that it hasn't been published, not all of it at least. The question is if there are any other bilateral issues relating to North Macedonia and Bulgaria mentioned in that proposal, which could be obstacles or conditions for the continuation of the accession.
Now, I've been absent for a couple of days, but nevertheless, Mose, I've had the privilege of following the press, the middays every day, and I know that every single day almost of the past week, you've been asking basically the same question. And you have had, I think, very, very consistent answers on the part of my colleagues when it comes to the negotiating framework and the conditions under which the process is underway with North Macedonia. So it is clear that we're not going to be making any further comments to what we have already said here in the press room on that. I would ask you to address yourself to the authorities of North Macedonia and Bulgaria if you have any other questions on this. We have played our role in this process. Now the ball is obviously in the court of other institutions. Okay. Are there other questions on the enlargement process for us today? That is not the case, so I open the floor to other issues. Yes, please. Nawab.
Thank you, Eric. Nawab Khan Kuna. I have a question on foreign affairs related to developments in Sri Lanka. Yesterday, the Foreign Affairs Council issued a very short statement saying that they touched upon what happened in Sri Lanka. So, Peter, can you give us some more information? What is the EU planning? Is it planning to send some humanitarian aid or financial aid to Sri Lanka? Thank you.
Thank you, Nawab. Indeed, Sri Lanka was mentioned. It was not a full discussion item at the FAC. It was mentioned among the current affairs, so the member states exchanged briefly their opinions on the developments. The European Union, of course, is following and watching very closely what is going on in Sri Lanka. And I think there was clear consensus that we are, of course, taking note of the decision of the president ad interim to order the declaration of the state of emergency. And we expect that the parliament will elect the new president on 20th of July, tomorrow. All parties, all stakeholders in Sri Lanka should cooperate and focus on peaceful, democratic and orderly transition for the benefit, of course, of the country and the people. And it is the responsibility of authorities in power to pave the way to a solution from the current crisis. And then there was also consensus by the ministers and by the member states that the EU, as always, is standing ready to help Sri Lanka and its people. And we are assessing all the available options, how to further step up our assistance and our support to Sri Lanka in these very, very difficult times.
Thank you very much. Any other questions on Sri Lanka for Peter? I do not see any. Any other questions on foreign affairs for Peter whilst he is here on the podium? Mose.
The floor
Hold
again.
on. Yeah, please always wait until it's read before you.
Yes, sorry to take the floor again, but I would like to benefit from Peter's presence here on the podium. This is also related to the Foreign Affairs Council yesterday. As we know, the Council announced that it would plans to reconvene the Association Council's meetings between EU and Israel in the near future, perhaps in a matter of a couple of months. But as the High Representative Borrell said, first, EU has to agree on its common position. And I wonder if you could elaborate on this, what that means, because as far as we know, there is already a kind of EU position on the peace process, which is based on the two-state solution. I understand that it's too early to speculate about the prospects of these association council meetings, but would you say that the very announcement is a kind of turning the page in, let's say, a political dialogue between EU and Israel, which has been quite tense in recent years? Thank you.
Peter.
Thank you, Mose, and I will not go beyond what HRVP said yesterday because he was addressing this issue both in the opening remarks and then answering a very detailed question on the essence and sequence of the steps. So I would just refer you to read or listen to what he said. But I can only clarify one thing. The Association Council is not about Middle Eastern peace process only. The Association Council is basically the highest political body to discuss the broad range of issues in our relationship. And the member states, again, in their discussions, they were quite clear that Israel is an important partner for the European Union, and within the framework of the Association Council, we can discuss all the issues that we feel like. And in order to prepare the Council, and this is with Israel the same, it is with any other partner when we have Association Council or Stabilization on Association Council, Cooperation Council, we go into these councils with EU position that has to be agreed by member states. So the procedure leading to organizing the Association Council is marked by unanimous decisions of the member states, both about the appropriate time to convene, about the position of the EU, and then, of course, finding the exact date, also in cooperation with the partner. All this is happening based on the consensus of all the EU member states. But bottom line is, Association Council is usually the highest political body to discuss the review or the state of our relations, what we want to do next, and is convened when the member states give their blessing, their green light. This has happened, so now the work will start on formulating our position with what are we going to this council, and then we will be discussing the date also in cooperation and in discussions with our Israeli partners.
Thank you very much. Any other foreign affairs related questions for Peter? Well, you're the, hold on, no, I do have some hands up on foreign affairs, strictly speaking, so let's go to those first. I have Nabil, if I understand.
Hi, thank you. Also on Israel, can you tell us where the relations stand now on gas with Israel? Are you discussing gas supplies from Israel? Do you have any details on this? Thank you.
So this is not really a foreign affairs question. I understand why you would think it is, but it's more an energy question. But in fact, you know that President von der Leyen was in Israel and in Egypt recently. And that on the occasion of this visit, we signed a memorandum of understanding that foresees the development of our energy relationships and the possibility for gas to be delivered to Europe from Israel over Egypt. So this is the stand of the relations at this point in time. Obviously, this is work in progress. Any other questions for Peter on foreign affairs? Where you are?
Hi, I think it's foreign affairs. So I don't know. You have any update or comment so far on the today's ongoing ninth China-EU high-level economic and trade dialogue, or you will have some press release later today? Thank you.
Thank you, Weyo. Unless I am mistaken, actually, we already have a daily news element, which was published today. So you will find some elements on this here. But of course, I can call Balázs, who's standing in for Miriam, to provide you with some information on this high-level economic dialogue, which took place this morning. Balázs.
Indeed, with the caveat that a press release is being elaborated as we speak, but let me share with you some teasers leading up to that process of publishing this press release. So indeed, the ninth economic and trade, high-level economic and trade dialogue between the EU and China took place this morning. The meeting was chaired on our side by Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis and Vice Premier Liu He on the Chinese side. Important to add that Commissioner Mary McGuinness was also there, notably when it came to financial services. Now, what I can share is that the meeting focused on the global economic challenges, in particular, including disruptions of supply chains caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the impacts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, including on food, energy, and financial markets. The two parties also discussed bilateral trade and investment concerns and cooperation in financial services. So that would be a brief readout, and more will come in the press release once it's published.
Thank you very much. Balázs, any other questions on this issue? That is not the case, so let me open the floor to any other issues, perhaps benefiting from the fact that Balázs is on the podium on files that are under his responsibility. So I have Leah. Is it a question for Balázs on trade or on his portfolios?
Yes, yes, on trade. Thank you. I wanted to know if there was already more information on the roadmap for the coalition of trade ministers for climate that Commissioner Dombrovskis announced on Twitter with 3 other countries. Wanted to know if that roadmap would be made public at some point, if we could have some news item or press release today, and yeah, if we could have more info on that already. Thank you.
I'm not aware of any press material on this, certainly not today, but I will inquire with our colleagues at the DG and let you know if there's any updates I could share.
Okay, thank you. Any other question on trade? I have a question from George.
Hello.
Yes.
This is not for trade necessarily, but it is for Balázs, as I believe is replacing Miriam. It's for food security and the halloumi file. Okay, so from the Cyprus Agency, the government yesterday in Cyprus announced it has come with an agreement with producers to pursue some minor changes on the characteristics of halloumi, the finished products, and on transitional periods. Would it be possible to have a statement from the Commission on what is possible to change on the PDO file for halloumi from the Cypriot side, and if these changes are feasible, and what the process would be if the government side wants to change things in the file? Thanks.
Balázs.
Yes, I can clarify some of the questions that you have raised. So indeed, it is possible to submit modifications to a registered geographical indication. We understand indeed that the Cypriot authorities want to submit modifications. And we are, of course, in contact with them about that, and the process is following its course.
Very good. Thank you very much. Hold on, Mose. Is it on trade? Okay, go ahead.
Discuss.
Please wait until, I know that your enthusiasm for asking questions, but you need to wait until the microphone is red so that interpreters can do their job and people can hear you. Go ahead.
I just want to say that this question reminds me of another question a year ago when we talked about cheese diplomacy, as you remember, in Cyprus. And I remember that this cheese received this designation some time ago, a month or 2 months ago. And what was not clear to me was whether it also covered the northern part of the island, the Turkish Cypriotic part, because they're also producing this cheese. Thank you.
I have to say that I'm stumped there. I don't know if we can answer that question here on the podium or whether we will have to come back to you. Balázs.
I think this answer will require the real trade spokes, not the backup.
Yeah,
one.
so we will come back to
we'll
you on that. George, you have a follow-up question on this. Your hand is still raised in any case. No. Okay, then we will move on. Yes, please, you have the floor.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Mohsen on behalf of Euronews Farsi. I have two separate questions. The first one is about the turbine dilemma. As we know, the maintenance of Nord Stream 1 is supposed to end tomorrow and go back to service. But with this turbine dilemma, we are unsure, and Gazprom issued a extraordinary situation warning, and we are in uncertainty. Ukraine claiming this turbine is in violation of sanction, and Germany says otherwise. I would like to know the position of Commission on this, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Tim.
Hi there. Yeah, I come back to confirm what I said also from the podium last week on this topic, but happy to repeat. The Commission supports Canada's decision to return this turbine to Germany after the maintenance. With the return of this part, one of the excuses being used by Russia for reduced gas flows through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline has been removed. We've been in contact with Germany and with Canada and with Siemens on this issue to ensure the Commission is well informed of the situation. And then specifically on sanctions, the EU sanctions regime does not affect goods or technology which are linked to the transport of natural gas.
Thank you. And I would say that this is absolutely not linked, at least as far as we can see, to what you were saying about a statement by Gazprom on force majeure. We don't have any link between those two issues. You had a follow-up, I think.
Well, the follow-up, yeah, but is it clearly not in violation of sanction, as you say? And
Said that.
yeah, okay. And but what about the Gazprom statement? Is it excuse, or I mean, how you perceive that?
Sorry, you're talking about the Gazprom statement about the fact that it invoked force majeure vis-à-vis certain. So first of all, I don't think it's a statement. I think it has been reported. We don't have a Gazprom statement. We have reports on the fact that Gazprom would have apparently notified some of its clients on this, but we don't have a statement from Gazprom on this. Tim, anything to add?
Yeah, exactly. As Eric says, I mean, we've seen reports of some exchange of letters or something. I mean, what is clear is that we are working on our preparedness for next winter. We're working on all possible scenarios. That's our job, our responsibility, to make sure that Europe is prepared for any eventuality for next winter. And as you know, I think that's something that we're going to come out with some announcements this week in terms of preparedness.
Thank you very much. Giovanni, on energy?
Speaking about Gazprom and gas, Commissioner Hahn in Singapore has been reported as saying that the Commission is expecting that there will no restart of delivery of gas via Nord Stream 1. I was just wanting to ask you if you can confirm this assessment and you can elaborate on this. Thank you.
Well, yeah, as I just said, we are working on every possible scenario. And one of the scenarios that we have to factor in contingency planning is the possibility of flows not restarting. But as I say, we're working on all possible scenarios.
Giovanni.
Just not to insist, but I mean, apart reading his statement, it looks like, I mean, you have a favorite, so to say, scenario. The way you are speaking now, it looks like it's it's all on the same level. Do you have, I mean, how can I say, a most probable scenario you're working on? Thank you.
Giovanni, I think you've been around long enough to know, just like we do, that it is impossible for us to predict how Gazprom is going to act. We already have 12 countries, or in certain cases, companies within countries that from one day to the next have experienced disruptions, either full or partial flow from Gazprom. Therefore, what Gazprom is going to do tomorrow is your best guess as well as ours. But what is clear, let me answer. What is clear is that when we are preparing winter contingency plans, winter preparedness plans, we base ourselves on the worst possible scenario. And this is absolutely obvious. The President has said it, the commissioners have said it, everybody has said it. What is the worst possible scenario? It is that, and this therefore has to be our assumption based on our planning, that there will be a full disruption by Gazprom. Whether it will happen or not, who knows? Who knows? But if we were standing here and telling you, au doigt mouillé, as we say in French, we consider there's a 50% chance that flows restart, and therefore we're not going to prepare, you would be the first, rightly so, to be on our backs. I think this is the way that you have to interpret the comments by Commissioner Hahn. No, you have a follow-up, I believe. No? Okay. Yes, on this?
I have a different question on energy.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Diversification of sources from day one of the crisis was something which we constantly heard from Commission. Based on that, do you have any plan or any perspective to investing in Iranian natural gas resources, having in mind the sanctions and current situation between Iran and Europe? Are there any talks or plans? Because the abundant resources of Iran and this current condition, do you have anything on that?
I think on the question of sanctions, it's more from Peter's perspective that we would answer the question. I mean, what I can say is that we are talking to a wide range of potential partners, as we've said, and we've enumerated many of them here from the podium. We signed yesterday a new agreement with Azerbaijan, which will increase flows already this year and looking to increase those further into the future. We're also seeing very high flows of LNG from the US. We've seen increased pipeline imports as well from Norway. We have improved deliveries from Algeria, from Qatar. So there's many partners we're talking to. You haven't heard us mention Iran yet in terms of a potential agreement.
Yes, on energy. Just press the button on the mic and wait until it becomes red.
Well, thank you. I'm Arndt Henze with ARD. Just to follow up on the energy emergency plan, will it include any instruments, politically or technically, to help the member states accountable to implement the suggestions, the proposals made by the Commission?
Member states what, sorry?
Held accountable to implement the proposals.
Hold them accountable.
Yeah, to implement the proposals.
Right. So, indeed, you are slightly new here if you expect us to give you details on something which is going to be presented by the college tomorrow. So I invite you to come back to the press room tomorrow when, hopefully after HEBDO has concluded and the college has concluded, we will present the proposal. Right. Tommaso, on energy?
Tommaso Gallavotti, the Chronository. It's just a question about the LNG deliveries from the US. I know they have been rising in the last months, since March. I wonder if you have any data, specific data on deliveries and possibly on the average price. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I can tell you is data that I have for the first half of this year, Tommaso. So in terms of the US LNG imports, they are around 30 BCM for the first 6 months of this year. And that is compared to total US LNG imports of 22 BCM for the whole of 2021. So a significant increase. And the share of the US in our overall LNG imports for the first 6 months of this year is around 46%.
Yeah, actually, that's information we already gave out yesterday as well in the technical briefing. But I think that you see here the impact of the discussions that have taken place between the EU and the US, the statement that we had between President von der Leyen and President Biden, which basically underpin this effort to increase LNG exports towards Europe. Now, I see one hand raised in the chat. I assume that it is also on energy. So, Stefano, you have the floor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Perfect. Yes, I wanted to follow up on this statement by Commissioner Hahn. If he said that the Commission doesn't expect Russia to restart Nord Stream, then is that an overstatement, or is it a mistake from the point of view of the Commission? Thank you.
Look, let's not split hairs in four here. We are working on the worst possible scenario. And that scenario, an assumption, therefore, is that Gazprom would no longer deliver any gas to Europe. As I've said before, and I think Commissioner Hahn used exactly the word assumption, we are working on the assumption that What I'm telling you is that we are basing our winter preparedness plans on the worst possible scenario. And this is what I can say. I think that there is absolutely complete convergence between these different ways of expressing the same thought. So this is where we stand today, and I invite you to join us tomorrow for the press conference to discuss these issues further. Okay, I see no further questions on energy. Thank you, Tim. Are there other questions for us today? No, so thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.